The Planning Commission meeting for the City of Wilmington for Wednesday, May 1st, 2024 is called to order. Would you rise with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Attorney, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All matters requiring commission action shall be presented to the Planning Commission by the planning staff and the applicant. In situations where planning staff is the applicant, there will be only one presentation. City staff will make the first presentation. The applicant will make the second presentation. Both presentations are limited to 5 minutes each. To maintain an orderly meeting, all presentations shall proceed without interruption unless the commission desires to intervene with questions or comments. The chair will open the public hearing for those physically present wishing to speak about an item. Those in favor of an item shall be heard first, followed by those opposed to an item. A 10-minute time will be allowed for public comment in favor of an item. A 10-minute time will be allowed for public comment in opposition to an item. A staff member will track the 10-minute time periods. Is that Ms. Painter tonight? Thank you. And will notify the speaker at the 5-minute mark, the 1-minute mark, and verbally call time when it expires. The chair, in their discretion, may extend any of these time periods. All groups, organizations, neighborhoods, or similar associations desiring to comment are asked to appoint one spokesperson to present their concerns or point of view to the commission on each agenda item. The public has been encouraged to submit their comments in writing via a web-based form located on the City of Wilmington's website. All comments received prior to 3 p.m. today were forwarded unedited to the Planning Commission. All comments received will be delivered to City Council when the item advances. All comments received will be made available to the public if requested. All votes will be voice votes after proper motions are made and consistency statements are read into the record. The chair will state the outcome of the vote and the action. Rezoning requests that receive an unfavorable recommendation from the Planning Commission may be appealed by the applicant to the Wilmington City Council. Appeals should be in the form of a letter submitted to the city clerk within 10 days of this hearing. Any items being appealed will tentatively be heard by the City Council on June 4th. Commissioners, you had the minutes from the last meeting in your packet. Is there any discussion or comments? If not, I'll hear a
I
motion.
make a motion that we accept the minutes from last month's meeting.
Second.
Commissioner Pollack has moved to approve the minutes of the April meeting, seconded by Commissioner Collier. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, our first item of new business is a general rezoning of property containing 0.1 of an acre located at 616 Masks Alley from R3, medium density, high density, mixed residential district to UMX, urban mixed use district. And we have Mr. Mahoney here for the staff presentation.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. This site is located northwest of the intersection of Castle Street and 7th Street. It includes a portion of a 13,000 square foot parcel. It's about 4,400 square feet approximately. The greater parcel itself contains a detached single dwelling unit. The portion highlighted in green, where the rezoning is being requested, is currently vacant. This map shows a general vicinity surrounding the request, along with some photos of the site conditions on site. These are photos of the existing conditions along Castle Street. These are photos of adjacent land uses. As you can see, there are some adjacent commercial uses along Castle Street, some triplexes located along 7th Street, vacant land to the northeast of the site, There's single dwelling residential located to the east of the site. As mentioned, site's currently zoned R3 residential. It's bordered by R3 to the north and east. UMX zoning urban mixed use is located to the south and west. This proposal is also located within the boundaries of the South Side Small Area Plan. This plan calls for new development to be compatible with the character of the area and that the existing development be maintained in a manner that enhances the character of the community. The Southside Small Area Plan at this location identifies this site as within an area recommended for potential historic district expansion. The subject property is located within a neighborhood scale infill area of opportunity on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies map. It places a particular emphasis on surrounding neighborhood fabric and compatibility of new design within historic neighborhoods. As population growth leads to new housing and development patterns, new development within established neighborhoods should address the existing distinctive character of the surrounding area while allowing transitional changes. The need to increase housing supply, neighborhood commerce, and to mature as a city should be balanced with the need to protect the desired neighborhood character and preserve historic resources. In this case, the further encroachment of the UMX district is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and uses at this location. Staff believes that the proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and it is not consistent with the Southside Small Area Plan, and we therefore recommend denial. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here as well.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Adams?
So when the original designations were drawn for UMX, were they drawn around current existing uses so that basically what was in place there would have a better chance of initial conformance and future development? Like, I'm just trying to understand the sort of jagged nature of how and why the rationale between when UMX was created between that and the R3.
Right, so this area was once zoned Main Street mixed use. When we updated the land development code in 2021, it converted to urban mixed use. The Main Street mixed use zoning went away due to the similarities between the two districts. At that time, it's my understanding that basically all existing parcels that had frontage to Castle Street in these areas that were converted to UMX were included as part of the UMX. So that's kind of why you see the boundary change along with the parcel lines.
Commissioner Woodruff?
I'm just, by the diagram shown in the track where the site we're dealing with, does the site have access to a road?
It does not currently have access to a road. It would have alley access, the portion that's being rezoned, but the larger parcel, which is outlined in that white, which might be a little difficult to see on this map, maybe that might be a better one. It does have access out through to 7th Street. You can kind of see it there. Maybe there's a better image. So there is, the larger parcel as a whole does have a small bit of frontage on 7th Street.
Okay, I'm still confused. Masked Alley goes where? From 7th, obviously.
Right, it goes through the site and then out actually to the north. There's another alley that runs to Church Street.
Okay. So this site we're dealing with could, in that, would it be the northeast corner, would have access to Masked Alley?
Yes, potentially, yes.
If it was being treated as a single site for whatever?
Right. It could also be recombined with the parcels to the south and have access to Castle Street as well.
Okay. And I know it's recited in the materials, but how much property does the owner of this tract have around it? Which tracts?
I'm not able to speak to that. I could defer to the applicant to see how much they
that's
actually
fine.
own.
That's fine.
Commissioner Lennon?
So is the alley a city right-of-way?
I don't believe it's a right-of-way, no. It's a right-of-way as it goes to the north, but there is a frontage there. Let's see. trying to find a clear picture that shows the actual right-of-way. I think that's probably the best one.
I drove it and tried to walk it today and was
Yeah,
trying to
it's very
find a clear.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking off of 7th.
it's real property as it goes to 7th.
So but it's fee simple for the owner, or it's a city right-of-way to 7th Street?
There's no right-of-way shown
There's
there.
no
The
right-
right-of-way would go
okay.
to the north of.
That's what I was trying to understand, but the north-south from Church to this subject parcel, that is right-of-way?
Correct.
Okay. And this, just so I'm clear, this is the portion of that parcel that is at the end of that parking lot
Correct.
between those two structures? Okay.
All right, thank you. Whoa. Commissioner Kofer.
Thank you. The GIS and whatnot shows this as one large tract. Are you showing lots of record, or is this a subdivision, this green highlighted? Is that a lot of record right there? The green?
I would have to look into that. Right now, the request is for this portion of this parcel to be rezoned to UMX. I don't have any plans for a subdivision as part of this
Okay.
that I'm
And,
aware of.
So the whole property would be split zoned, so.
Correct.
you'd have a-
split zoned, okay. And the property to the east, to piggyback on Commissioner Adams' comment of this, the jagged nature of that zoning, yep, if we go to the zoning map, that's same owner with a single-family dwelling,
Right.
and then beyond that, fronting South 7th Street is a R3. What sits there? Is that a single-family dwelling?
Which lot are you referring to?
To the, one more to the east, where I see
Yellow?
it now, the yellow star. Mhm.
Yeah, single dwelling.
The geometry of it, you know, looking on paper, of course, makes it look like you would achieve the UMX zoning for the block, but it's a little jagged again. One last question would be, in 2005, with the Main Street mixed use, basically being the Castle Street corridor,
Right.
and then trying to achieve diminished impacts or no additional encroachments into the residential. And that's in the South Side Small Area Plan, that section of not encroaching into residential. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, the South Side Small Area Plan speaks to, specifically in this area, considering the residential area, considering that as a historic district expansion possibly in the future. That's,
So that's the purpose for the limiting encroachment from UMX into residential, is the potential for future historic.
it's one of the many reasons that we looked at it when we did our analysis. We looked at, kind of the impacts of a UMX zoning encroaching further behind residential homes and nearer to residential homes in established neighborhoods. So some of the comp plan policies speak to that as well, along with the small area plan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Pollock?
Patrick, so to piggyback off this line of questioning, when I'm looking at the package, basically when it talks about UMX, and there's 5 main objectives of UMX, right? And it says, enhance and preserve existing urban development patterns. So existing patterns. So number 2, effect quality design and a variety of built forms of lasting value that result in a pedestrian scale. Provide a mix of housing options. Promote and enhance transit options, particularly those that are pedestrian-oriented. And then it says encourage a mix of uses to foster a sense of community. So I'm going to make an assumption, and I'm asking you for a yes or no here. The part of the main reason for the staff recommending a denial is, it going to UMX, the request, it doesn't fit any of these. Is that fair?
Right. And The allowances of the uses within the UMX district are probably not compatible. You know, when we did our analysis, we looked at the allowable uses compared to R3, and further expanding those uses into the established neighborhood, and didn't find that to be consistent.
Well, I was going to say, and so to further that discussion, when I go back and I look through the, you know, the staff analysis with the arrows, and I'll always use Commissioner Lennon's favorite comment is the scale and character of the neighborhood. And obviously, looking at the mixed-use things, this doesn't seem to fit. Going to UMX is where I'm going, and that's your guys' collective analysis, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Collier.
Patrick, so this one, the whole parcel in white, one parcel,
Correct.
and we would be rezoning the area in the center of it to UMX.
Correct.
And at least what I read in the applicant's application is they're wanting to do that to combine it with the parcel, the UMX parcel to its south. I assume the one with the parking lot on it. I don't know that. Do you know, have you discussed that at all?
I will let the applicant speak to their plans. Since this is a general rezoning, we have to look at any and all scenarios, and any uses that would be allowed within that district on that portion of that parcel.
Okay. It being not deeper than the adjacent parcel to the west, that is UMX, does that change anything, or in your opinion, no?
We looked at that when we were doing the analysis. I think generally, you know, when we looked at this proposal, we didn't want to encroach any further than what's already been done there.
And the line, the zoning line matches what's in the south side small area plan too, right? That zoning line is, the zoning and the small area plan is pretty unanimous, or they match?
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Yep, of course.
All right, everybody got a turn? Thank you. We'll have
Thank
the
you.
applicant come up next.
Good evening, members of committee. I'm Jonathan Washburn. I work with the entities that are owners of this property and some adjacent property. There are many family members. There are children, spouses. There are several different entities. Irv Friedland is my main contact. This is just a picture that came off some City of Wilmington website. That's the front of what used to be Friendly's department store. Then it became Second Skin Vintage. This is across the street looking at the parking lot that leads to the area in the back, and the parking lot is an unusual configuration. I'm going to cycle through a couple quickly. This is during the daytime when the parking lot gets full. I don't think this parking lot would be approved under today's code because half of it's owned by the property on the right and the other half is owned by the domestic violence. That was a donation from the Friedlands to domestic violence so that they could have some parking of their own. We didn't know it would turn into this kind of a complicated parking scenario. If you look here, you'll see property that's owned by the Friedland family. There's this large piece in the back that has the red around it on the right-hand side. The left-hand side is all of it combined. There's the yellow piece, which is part of the storefront. It's connected to the property in the front. And then there's the property in the front in purple, which is the building that used to be Friendly's and their owned portion of the parking lot. The other half of that parking lot, again, belongs to domestic values, which is domestic violence, which is shown as Vintage Values here because that's the store they operate there. The property that we're seeking to rezone is this piece that's marked in red, and there's a reason for it being designed that way because historically that property was used in conjunction with the property in the front and the parking. This is just another type of city map with the property lines defined and another map that shows this site. You'll notice in these two aerial photographs on the left-hand side, you can see behind the 3-1, there are some different stored vehicles there. This has historically been used as parking. It was graded as parking. It was utilized as parking for decades. I have a land glide program that has really current pictures, and that picture on the right-hand side was taken after the parking lot was resurfaced on our side. So they removed some of those junk vehicles. What the people who want to operate the business in that location up front want to put a fence around this to create a sense of privacy for the neighbors in the back. In fact, I'm going to get into who some of those are, and that's where they'd like to fence it so it would be secure and separate from the neighboring uses. This is a picture of how it looks now. There's an old chain link fence back there. It's not been attended to. It's not zoned commercial, so the commercial users aren't going back there spending money on it. They'd like to, but they can't right now. This is a picture of how it's coming down. This is a picture of the fence as it has grown into the trees. I put this in here to emphasize how long it has been separated by that fence with the exact boundary line that we are seeking to rezone. That fence has been there long enough to grow into there. There's the fence that's grown into the other tree. So it's been there for decades. And then the neighbor on the other side, domestic violence, the fence is coming down, and it turns out coincidentally that fence is about 3 inches over the line on their property, so we can't just go and take it down, but we're working with them. They're nice to work with. The person who's going to occupy the building has already gone in and done some landscaping for them. And I will say it is unfortunate, the fellow on the right-hand side, Anthony Durrett's helping spearhead the project of getting this done there, and he's had some unfortunate comments made about why they don't want that development being done, but I don't think that this zoning is not part of it. But it's really been a bit testy. This is the current zoning, as you already know. That's the site. This is a backed out site. This is the site in red that we're seeking the rezoning for. The green is identifying property that is also owned by the Friedlands. They own the property to the north of it. They own the property to the east of it. Those are zoned residential. They are part of this bigger property, and they would continue to be zoned residential. The property to the east of it that fronts on 7th Street is owned by the Friedland entity, and the property on the front includes their half of the parking lot plus the building that used to be Friendly's, and that site is owned by the Friedland family. So we are surrounded, all the property that's owned residential that abuts this property is owned by the Friedland family. These are some access points that might or might not be applicable. I want to tell you that access point that's called Mass Alley is not an existing public right-of-way. It's just a driveway for the house that's on the front that goes to 7th Street. Have I run out of time?
Yeah, that's the time. Do you need a few more minutes? You think 3 more minutes?
I
Would
had
that do
5
it?
minutes. I used 5 minutes
Oh,
on it?
yeah. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
Okay, well, let me just show you. We're concerned about the property for the Leathers and Sokolowski. That's why we want to put up the fence. That's the main fence we want to have. It would look like that. I have a copy of the city map of Wilmington that shows the development. I do want to point out this property has been owned since 1919 by the Friedlands on the front. Since 1967, where we want to rezone, 1940, 1949. The rezoning that took place long after they bought this property and used it. And the access points are all over the place, but Mass Alley is not an access point. I would like to also say, and then I will stop, this property that was the parking lot on front used to contain Lewis Grocery, a Western Wear in the center, little 15-foot wide buildings, and an appliance store. During some race riots in the 70s, they were burned down. But up until that point, this entire piece of property has been used commercial. This would be considered and could be another approach to this with a pre-existing non-conforming use. But we chose to do this because we wanted to present this information and get it properly done. So there's the legal description. And they already identified, I don't fully understand all of those height characteristics in existing neighbors, and I had some comments on that. But I will say that our goal is to do this in a manner that will help keep it clean instead of having people that sneak back there late at night and they use it for a public restroom or other illicit activities. We want to clean it up, put a fence around it, and make it part of the nice development that we hope will go on there. My 6 minutes is up. I'll be glad
Thank
to
you.
answer any questions.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Woodruff?
Hey, Jonathan. I understand what you're saying, what you want to do is clean it up. Are you talking about fencing the whole, this tract in, or just three
Well,
sides
the front
of it?
parking lot is barriered by the two buildings on either side.
Right.
So the only other access to that is to come in from the backside. We want to fence it in, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Collier?
Jonathan, you mean fence it in like the existing chain link is today? So it would be closed off and its access would only be from Castle?
Well, that is in fact the way it is today with that chain link fence. That chain link fence is not exactly as secure as it could be, but it is closed off right now with a chain link fence.
And that's what you want to do with an improved fence?
We just want to remove the chain link fence, make an improved fence, do some landscaping. There's some parking possibilities back there. And also turnaround. That parking lot is atrocious.
Right.
And the only way to get out is to wiggle your way around. We will make a proper turn stub so people can
But there
turn.
would not be any access from the inside of the fenced area to Seventh or to, what's it, Queen? Is it Queen, the other side of Castle? No, I'm in the wrong direction.
No, we are not planning for that. If some kind of code says you have to have some sort of emergency access, we would certainly provide for that. But we are not planning, and we do not want to have cross-access for anywhere to any other place other than in and out through Castle Street.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, that is kind of the concern.
Commissioner Cofer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, Mr. Washburn, just one question. We've talked a little bit about maintaining or improving that fence. So is it my understanding that this will just continue to be a parking lot?
There's no plans for any construction on that, and I don't, the site doesn't at this point, kind of advocate for any great expenditure right now. There's no plan to do anything other than use it for a parking lot, maybe a couple chairs or something, little seating area, but no construction.
Is there anything in the code that prevents you from doing that today?
Well,
What
it's
you-
unresidential, and the only construction, we could put a duplex on that property right now. But,
Could you put gravel and improve your parking surface?
Well-
I just don't know. I'm sure maybe you do.
the technical problem, I believe, is that if we did have it just designed for extra parking and advertised as extra parking, it would be parking in conjunction with the other commercial uses on the front. We get a lot of trespasser parking, which just happens. But that would not be technically a residential use. If they're parking on residential property, they'd be commercial traffic parking on residential zone property. So I think the rezoning is necessary to make that a legitimate parking use.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question for staff, actually. Would they, if this goes through and they do what they want to do with just what they say they want to do with the parking, wouldn't they have to bring the entire parking lot up to code?
For sure, the portion that they're expanding, I'm not sure how they would do that.
I can't either.
Well, I have actually looked into that, and it is possible to have that back piece under code if there are only spaces on one side of it, and I think we measured out 6 additional spaces, which, believe it or not, is extremely valuable to have 6 additional spaces on 80-foot width, 80-foot length, plus a parking turnaround stub. So without having it on both sides, there's plenty of room. The way the front parking lot has been just developed over the years, it's parking on both sides. That would not be permitted. We verified that.
You'd lose parking.
Well, we're not
if you
we're
brought
not
that up to
changing
code.
anything with the front parking. We wouldn't be asking, and I think he didn't indicate that the front parking would have to be built to code. The new additional parking would have to be built to code, and that would mean parking only on one side.
To be honest, we have not really looked into the nuts and bolts of improving this for a parking lot. For certain, the rear parking area, if it was indeed established as a new parking area, it would have to comply. I'd have to see some kind of sketch to show how they would reasonably comply with that plan. It's really tight, so I'd be interested to see something. If they make any changes to the parking up front, the whole site would have to comply. And that, based on what I'm seeing, you would lose a lot of spaces.
Did you consider conditional district rezoning?
Well, we did. I didn't believed that was going to be necessary because we didn't have any specific design in mind. However, we do know that before we do parking, we'd have to have a design approved. So I don't have any objection to submitting a design for the parking plans. That would be part of the process. I don't know if you're suggesting that we'd have to get them to redesign the existing parking. We would just have to design the parking for the new parking being provided.
Right, well, the general rezoning allows a lot more than just parking by right, so.
I understand that.
We have to take all that into consideration. We can't just look at it
Absolutely.
as a parking lot. That's probably why staff didn't do the research, because we don't technically take that into consideration, so.
I understand.
And the zoning stays with the property, no matter who owns it or who wants to do anything with it. So that's where we are in our deliberations. Commissioner Pollack?
Yeah, following along that line of questioning, and I'm going to take a little bit of an adversarial role, so nothing personal. Why didn't you I mean, you've talked a lot about parking, you've talked a lot about that, and it sounds like from a general rezoning, there's kind of this ambiguous, what am I going to do with it? You've talked specifically a lot about parking, so I guess I echo the question. Why didn't you come in with a conditional rezoning? What was your thinking as one versus the other?
Well, I think in the future-oriented thinking on behalf of the owner, it is much better and easier to just have a straight rezoning, because 10 years from now, there may be some development idea that somebody comes up with, and it's zoned, and they could put a building on Castle Street and have the zoning in place already. However, it is my understanding that before anybody could build on this property, they're going to have to get a building permit. It's going to have to meet all the current criteria regardless of the zoning. So they're not going to just be able to go in and build a building because it's been zoned. They would have to meet all the other construction and permit criteria. But I hear your point. I don't know of any plans today, but I think the flexibility of future uses is always in the back of the mind of an owner.
So follow-up question, and Brian, this is probably more to you. The applicant has talked a lot about, putting a fence, the one picture you had the fence around that. Is there any building requirement, if under the general, that, dictates what kind of a fence or how the fence could look or not look?
I think it generally has to face out. I think there's a height restriction on the fence. I'd have to look in the code to see what that is at 6 or 8 feet. And then there's also a 5-foot setback buffer around that property line, so that would further constrict that property.
But that wouldn't or shouldn't, be a factor as to whether we vote yea or nay on a UMX versus not UMX.
No, I mean, just like the chair said, you need to consider all the uses that are permitted in the district.
Okay, thanks.
I would like to address that comment, though. That's an excellent comment. The person that I identified that's trying to develop this concept wanted to start that fence several weeks ago, and I said, really, it's not the time to do that yet. Let's go through the zoning process, and then you can didn't want to spend money on it, for one thing. I said, you spend money on it and don't come to us if it doesn't work out. So him getting that fence is raring to go. Already bought the material, as a matter of fact, sitting on a tractor, a trailer.
Commissioner Lennon?
If you're bored at night and watch these broadcasts, you see I'm generally in favor of straight rezonings. But I think the point that's being made here, looking at this reminds me of the one that we saw a couple years ago at Creekwood, where they were going for a straight, high-density multifamily rezoning. And, I mean, you nailed it. It's not today, it's 10 years from now, because all of these residential parcels back here, will whatever happens 10 years from now work within that group. And I know this area very well. I had a family member that lived there for a year and a half in that area, and I do worry about intruding with something where we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And it may not be 10 years, it may be 3 years. I mean, we know how the real estate world goes. So I guess for the first time ever, I have to say, why not a conditional rezoning, or some discussion with the city to achieve what the ultimate goal is in terms of the parking there?
Well, I'm pretty confident the owner, I don't know how easy it is to stand here right now and say, we convert to conditional district, because I don't think there would be any objection to that, because that is the only objective we have now. Can I stand here and request a change to conditional district?
I think
not
it's a
that
little
easy,
more
is it?
involved than that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that just seemed like something that they felt would be easier to just get a straight result. The neighbors, UMX goes back to the same line. We own the residential property that's on the 3 sides out of 4. There is no side adjacent owner. There's a catty corner owner, and the whole fence thing is because they came out and they said, hey, can y'all put a fence here? And the guy, Anthony said, I'll do a fence here. And I said, Anthony, just let's get it rezoned first. So we're trying to do this to accommodate the neighbors, 3 out of 4 of which are the same owner. So, but doing a conditional district CD would not be fatal. It just seemed like taking a step, and then later we might say, well, we wanted to put I don't know, a booth back there to sell flowers or something, which still, by the way, would require a proper permit. No booth to sell flowers is going to be allowed just because we decide to do that.
But I think that's sort of to my bigger question of why you're going for a general, because exactly, if it's straight UMX, you can do a lot more than just sell flowers. And I think that's the concern. Versus a conditional, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but there may be a list of things thou shalt do and a list of things thou shalt not do. And that, when in a straight rezoning, it's whatever's in that zoning classification, that's what you're permitted to do.
Well, if the only way to obtain an approval is to go conditional district, I'm pretty sure the owner would say, well, let's just get that done for this current purpose. This is a 15-year lease, so it's probably not going to change anything that he's planning on doing. Sometimes leases don't go the full term, but I'm not sure how that's going to affect the timeline of things, but hey, that's the way things go. I would reiterate that this is already a non-conforming use. It's just, it's been used like that for decades, long before this UMX zoning went into place, and I'm not sure why it wasn't taken into consideration when this particular large-scale plan was done. But it wasn't, and here it is, and that's why we're here today.
I think the answer is the lot lines, since that's all one piece of property and there's so much of it that abuts residential. It was left out because, like you said, like multiple people have said, it's a jagged line, but it's along property lines. So if that was a property line at the time, it's possible that could be have been included in the UMX, but we'll never know.
Well, you're right.
So,
If that had been the property line, you're probably correct about that.
So,
but it was such a weird shape. For example, it
Welcome
looks
to
like Mast
downtown.
Alley is an alley.
Right.
It's not.
So, okay, any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Adams?
Just one, I guess, kind of question. There's nothing that would prohibit the building of a fence in a configuration the way you're talking with the existing zoning, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to respond to that comment, though. That's an excellent comment. We discussed that, too. I don't think that this owner, the guy that wants to build the fence, wants to invest the kind of money, his fence is going to cost $10,000. And I don't think he wants to do that if he doesn't have a zoning to allow it to be at least used for parking or something. So that is the only holdback on that. But you're absolutely right. We did investigate that. We could build a fence. There's a chain link fence. We just improve it.
Commissioner Collier?
Madam Chair, one other thing, I looked at the R3 zoning. For you to put parking on there under its current zoning, you have to get a special use permit, which is the same process as going through the conditional. Really doesn't change that much. The other part is if we were to rezone it as general, in the stated application, it's going to be recombined with the front parcel. So now it's a bigger parcel, which includes 2 parking lots. So then you would have 2 parcels that have blanket use on UMX. And I think that's what scares everyone more than anything else. If you get a UMX rezoning for a parking area under conditional district, if you then want to come back, recombine them, it's not a problem. That can be done. That property still has a condition to it. But then if you need to build a structure back there, then the only thing you do is walk through and ask for the permission to build that within the UNMX guidelines. Granted, it's another step, but it is a thing that can be done. I think the one thing you said that still concerns me a bit is there's a gentleman with a 15-year lease. I'm sure he's not getting a 15-year lease just to put a fence up. So is his plans to put parking on there?
Well, he would like to put parking on there.
Okay, so
I
even
have told
if,
them from the very beginning, you can't plan on that.
Right.
Because even though it's been used for parking, it is not zoned, and you have to do it correctly or don't do it. He wanted to build a fence,
understood.
and I said, don't do that. And by the way, it's probably even more odd, that front parking, you combining it, because we can only
Agreed.
combine that half with it.
And I
It gets
see
even
all
more
of
weird.
that. I see all of that, but it's still, as Commissioner Lennon said, 10 years from now, what happens?
Right.
So your easiest path is, in my opinion, is a conditional zoning, because I'm not sure that you're going to get the special use permit to allow parking in the residential district
I
without
don't think
rezoning.
we would either. I think
So-
I asked about that sometime
And
ago.
at least, unfortunately, now bringing it forward, everyone knows you want to put commercial parking on a residential lot, so it would be certainly in violation if the guy goes and builds his fence and starts renting out space. I understand, your path of least resistance, I believe, is that conditional
Yeah,
district zoning.
I see the path I'm headed towards, but I would like to mention that as an alternative, there is the issue of, is this a non-conforming grandfathered in use, which we don't need to go there because I'd rather do it through the proper zoning process. It has been used for that. It has been used for that for decades. It has not changed. You could check aerial photographs and determine that too. But the course of pursuing that solution is even more convoluted than just going for CD zoning. So.
Correct. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lennon?
Mr. Chambers, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did you say you did or did not know that this was potentially going to be for parking?
I don't know that we knew what the specific use was, and we did not evaluate it for parking. We evaluated it as a general rezoning and considered all the uses.
Okay, bingo. So I think the last thing he just said is probably the most relevant thing that's been said. No offense to anybody else, including myself and you tonight, but I think my recommendation, maybe it's CD, maybe it's some other avenue, but is to maybe sit down with planning staff and say, here's the objective. What's the best way for us to get there? Because I think you've heard, I don't want to speak for everybody, but pretty clearly a general is a little scary.
I've heard that before when I've seen straight rezonings come up, and I understand it, and I have no qualms about the fact that this is the direction you're headed. I understand that. Disappointed because it just adds more steps, but that's business.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Were you going to, I can move forward with the public hearing and we can go through all that. But if, it sounds like you might be looking to withdraw
Well, then,
the rezoning request and come back with a conditional
Thank
at some
you.
point in the future?
I think it would be very helpful for me to address that now. If I were to withdraw and seek to recast the existing application as a CD, would that be permitted? Or do I have to go back to my owner friend and ask him for another check and the whole new process? Can we do an amended application?
That's something you can handle on staff level, but there's more requirements with the conditional district, so I think
All right.
they'll want
Well,
you
I
to do a new
understand.
application. Oh, here comes Brian. I was trying to save you from that, Brian. Go ahead.
I think we'd be willing to work with the applicant
Oh, good.
on that if that's the path he chose.
Thank you.
I've done CDs before too. They are a little more complicated, but it's the same thing, and I'll do that. I'll do that. And then I'd like to withdraw or postpone a ruling for now.
Mr. Attorney, it would be a withdrawal, right, not a continuance, since he's come back with a different request?
And you're going to work with staff on the revised application.
I would like to work with staff on that
Is there a timetable?
tomorrow at 9 a.m. Oh, I am leaving for Georgia in the morning.
Our
right
July
after
meeting is probably when it
On Monday or
would,
Tuesday, I will get with you and we'll set a schedule perhaps.
I don't know that we're comfortable picking a date at this point. If the intent is to withdraw and come back and modify that application to be a CD, there's a lot more that goes into that process, as you all know. So we'd have to go over that with the applicant and then make sure that timeline fits. So a date certain I don't think it would work at this point.
okay.
Well, I was kind of kidding, but I'll be available. I just won't be here the last 2 days of this week. I'll get with you and we'll set it up. So withdraw for now.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to withdraw?
I'll make a motion that we accept the applicant's request to withdraw his current application and work with the city staff to modify that application into, from a general to a conditional rezoning at a date to be determined by, staff and applicant meeting.
Second.
Who was that? Okay, thank you. Commissioner,
This is
any further
your
discussion?
right? I'm not part of that.
That's right, you're welcome to sit down, thank you. Any further discussion? All right,
Madam
Commissioner.
Chair, I do just, this is probably the wrong time, but so be it. It's ironic to me that, correct me if I'm wrong, but is a public hearing required for general rezoning?
Yes,
I'm sorry, a neighborhood meeting.
No, I don't think
Okay.
it is.
the neighborhood meeting is required for conditional. Is that what you-
For general rezoning.
Right.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of,
Commissioners, if y'all could talk into your mics, because it is being recorded rather than to each other.
so
Thank you.
a neighborhood meeting is not required for general rezoning.
Correct.
That is correct.
For conditional district.
Right. Neighborhood meeting is required for a conditional district rezoning request.
Okay. At some point, I'd love to talk more about that.
All right, Commissioner Pollak has moved to withdraw agenda item number 1, and we have seconded by Commissioner Lennon. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Good luck with your project. All right.
Is that a complete withdrawal? He said for now, when you're talking about amending this thing, is it a complete withdrawal?
Sure.
The whole process now?
The application as it has been submitted is withdrawn. What is going to happen now is he'll go back and work with staff to bring forth an application that has more detail about what they want to do, and they would be locked into those conditions until, they came back before us. So as opposed to what they're, and they will have a neighborhood, thank you, and they'll have a neighborhood meeting, so they'll get all the neighbors together to talk about it. Mhm. Right, that's right, I didn't get to the public hearing, so we already took it off. And you definitely want your voices to be heard, so if they move forward with the conditional district, look out for that community meeting notice. And that's where things can get started. All right, we'll move on to the agenda item number 2. Who's doing that one? Is that Mr. Mahoney or? Yeah, they're doing a continuance, but I don't know who's doing it.
Yeah, the applicant is requesting continuance. We told them we'd make that request on their behalf, so they didn't have to be there this evening. They just need more time to prepare for the meeting.
Okay. Do we have a motion to continue?
I'm going to make a motion to continue item number 2.
Second.
Second, third.
And sorry to jump back in. I believe we wanted to make that to the July 10th meeting, if that's okay.
My second still applies.
Who made the first?
Sorry.
Who made the motion?
Yes.
Yes. And over here, there was it's Commissioner
yeah.
Collier, I think, was Commissioner Adams has moved to continue Agenda Item 2 to a date certain of July 10th, seconded by Commissioner Collier. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Motion passes 7-0. A withdrawal and a continuance. Good work, people. Good, nice job tonight. All right, items from the commission.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I talked to a couple of my peers, and they just asked for an update. I went to this developers roundtable this afternoon around the subject of workforce housing. Interesting set of discussions. You know, new nicknames were discovered, but no, very seriously, yeah, Brian's looking at me, and I'm just, I thought the discussion was extremely open, extremely beneficial. The threads I picked up were, and the ones that resonated with me were a lot of discussion around the 40.6, 41% of costs for developers are statutory costs, which is an interesting, you know, thing. As Commissioner Lennon has a lot of times talked about process and talked about the cost to developers of doing things. I think there was a lot of discussion around, that I heard around process, you know, looking at ways to maybe streamline some processes. A good example of that is what we just saw here was, you know, the withdrawal of the current application, not requiring the gentleman to go back, refile, repay, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I think that's an example of what could be, what should be maybe. I picked up another discussion thread about the need to really ensure that the communication and the coherence between the staff, and I'll use the city term, the staff, the planning commission, city council, to make sure that, you know, everybody's kind of on the same page as what direction we're going as a city. So I found that interesting. There's a lot of discussion about that at the county level. But I think you know, for the most part, I think there were a lot of good topics put on the table. Ms. Painter and I talked briefly afterwards, and I just asked her, I said, you know, there's a lot going on, this group being one of them. And I also did stand up in front of the group and ask to please, there's terms that keep getting used interchangeably, and just, we need to all challenge ourselves that whether, you know, if we're talking about workforce housing or affordable housing or housing affordability or low-income housing, those are all different things. And we ought to just be, you know, we all challenge ourselves to be careful about using them interchangeably because they are different. And then I asked them too, from a data standpoint, that whether the denominator is a deficit of 12,000, you know, at the city level over the next 10 years, or 29,000 at the county over the next, how do we use the progress that we've made? As an example, Brian was so good to forward, you know, get us some data that I shared out with you all that says if we have approved as a planning commission since the beginning of January 2022, roughly 4,700 new doors in the city, how does that relate to that denominator of 12,000? Are we making progress? Are we making progress in the wrong buckets? And I don't know the answers to these questions. I honestly don't. I mean, that's why I defer to Linda and her team to really, you know, obviously work, you know, with different folks to try to do that. But the last thing I asked Linda to do is give some thought to how does she keep us informed of the different work groups? And there's a ton of them I know that you're involved in. You know, you probably lost count of all of them, but it's, you know, those I think are things that are of interest to us, and at least we have an opportunity once a month to, you know, hey, just want to let you know this is going on. Travis made a great suggestion about the, you know, the city strategy piece that he's working on. So opportunities to communicate and keep good lines of communication open. But I thought it was a good session. You know, Mr. Spatrino was there. And so, as were other developers, so I thought they were very open and frank So I thought it was a great session. For me, it was a great session just to learn, listen, and become educated. So Linda, do you want to add anything in, or?
Dates, we do have a staff member, Travis Henley, who's our senior planner for comprehensive planning, that attends the WAC meetings on a monthly basis, so we can get updates from him. That was actually one of the things I think I'd report on the Developers Roundtable, and that was information, so we do try to keep you updated on that, as well as other initiatives, and I think at some point we're talking about, is Commissioner Pollack mentioned, bringing Travis in to do a presentation on the greater downtown plan and what we're doing with that. And when we get to staff updates, I do have some news, so.
Commissioner Lennon?
Thank you, Commissioner Pollack. I think not only do you have a cost burden from regulatory issues and building codes and all the other things, but I think policy plays such a huge role in this. And an example I might give is the lower threshold for peak hour trips that the city of Wilmington uses to trigger a TIA versus the state norms is an example of adding time to a project, cost to a project that you might not otherwise have. A neighboring, I'll call it municipality/county, is looking at severely adjusting policy to now require a TIA prior to submittal and a 100-foot vegetative buffer on major thoroughfares. So think about what you're doing to cost, think about what you're doing to time of development. And as you heard me say last month, every new door helps the affordable housing issue. And it doesn't matter if it's $1 million house or a $100,000 house. Every door helps. And I think anything that, we're not policymakers, but I think stuff like that should be very scary to us as we go through these individual projects and realize how much work an applicant's done prior to getting here. And I don't want to see us make that a longer process. So,
Commissioner Adams?
I think we need to strike a balance and understand that schedule, cost, efficiency are factors, but they can't, in my mind, be the only things that we look at in terms of development, because even in Wilmington and not just Italy, design matters, and quality of what we do is as important to how we get it done, in my opinion. They're equally important. Go places where there's no zoning, and I think you'll like our quality of our city a lot better, than some other places where there's no regulatory sort of rules of the road. So yes, I think those are issues, and in the design world, we have to deal with those too. But again, it's a balance of kind of process and efficiency in my mind, and quality.
One of the things, I'll give Linda a lot of credit for this, was one of the developers there brought up a point about tree remediation and the cost to her to do that, and it was like, it was an astronomical cost, and it was almost kind of funny. Linda just turns around and says, I can help you with that. And it was just, so that kind of a discussion, and you're right, policy, absolutely. The balance, yeah, I mean, the point is there's no silver bullet here, and it's not going to happen overnight. But it was like I said, it was the awareness from everybody, like, here's the shoes that everybody walks in, and they're all different shoes. And how do we, at least if nothing else, get the shoes marching in the same direction? So that's why I thought it was a good session. I just wanted to share, some of you guys had asked about it, so.
Anything else from the commission? All right, items from staff.
And I think we sent you an email about the survey for the Greater Downtown Plan. If you haven't taken it, please do. Please share it with your networks and your friends. We have had some tremendous outreach happening. Our comprehensive planning staff has been out every weekend since the Azalea Festival and have talked to over 1,000 people. at those events, and really been able to kind of get we're starting to get the word out, trying to figure out where we have gaps. But there's actually going to be a workshop on May 16th at the Harrelson Center from 3 to 7 p.m. So we'll make sure to get the invitation out to all of you. It's a drop-in event, so it's not something where you need to come and stay for 4 hours. But that's going to be kind of our big, one of our big kickoff workshop for the project. But we will get Travis scheduled to come in and kind of give you an update on what we're hearing from the community on what they want. And if you receive the newsletter that goes out on a weekly basis from the city manager's office, you might actually be seeing some of those results, because we're updating it each week as we get new results in from the weekend events in terms of what the priorities we're hearing about. We've given 6 ideas for the future, and people are allowed to pick 3. And so in some cases, I have seen them pick 1 and just say, I'm putting my 3 votes on this. That's how important it is to me. So,
Wow, that's great.
and I believe, before I turn this over to Pat, City Council at their last meeting approved the rezoning associated with Link, as well as the associated special permit for that project. And then Pat has an introduction to make.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce the commission to our new associate planner, Zach Smith. Zach started with us this past month in April, and he has been working in our zoning division as a zoning officer for almost 2 years. He just graduated from UNCW with his MPA, his Master's in Public Administration. So we're really excited. We've been, Miranda and I and our team on site plan review have been just the 2 of us for a while, so we're very excited to add Zach and have a full team. So you'll be seeing him probably next month for a case, but we're very excited to have him. So I just want to introduce everybody.
Welcome, Zach, and congratulations on your graduation from the master's program. Anything else from the staff?
Yes.
I have one more thing to
There we
share. At our work session we had a few months back, we talked about looking at older neighborhoods that were platted with smaller lot sizes and kind of evaluating what an appropriate zoning district might be for those areas. We're going to take our first stab at applying a more consistent zoning to a neighborhood out in East Wilmington. What you have on the screen is kind of an announcement to what that meeting is. It's East Wilmington, the Fox subdivision. It's on Princess Place Drive. This is a neighborhood where all the lots are platted at 33-foot wide lots or smaller lots. There's a lot of nonconformities. This is a situation we're looking to apply an R3 district where there's an existing R5 district. So we are holding a community meeting out at the Davis Center at Maids Park on Thursday, June 6th. It's going to be a drop-in meeting from 6 to 8, and we're trying to we're going to send notices out, post signs, and get the community out there. We want to know what their thoughts on what we're cooking up and planning. We're not going to just drop it on them. So we want to just get this out, and we'll probably make this announcement again at next month's meeting, since it'll be the day before that meeting, just to let folks know what's going on. Contact staff, ask questions. We do have a neighborhood champion that's out there that's actually working with us to get the word out to the community, to let them know what's going on. But I just want to take this opportunity to share that initially, what we're doing. And we're excited to try this. We haven't done this before. We're excited to see how it works, and hopefully if it does go well, we can replicate it in other parts of the 45 corporate limits.
That's exciting. Thank you. All right. Anything else? If not, I'll hear a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
It's move to adjourn, second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.